Hey everyone. Yeah, it's hard to believe it's been 10 years since DC decided to start its original animated universe. It's DOAC, if you will, or DOAU. Its original animated universe. It decided to start it at that time. So, it's no surprise that DC, in commemoration of that, along with Warner Brothers, has decided to release, hold on for a sec. Let me check something. Yeah, I'm just making sure, but have decided to release a commemorative 10th anniversary edition of all of their DC original animated films. Now, this is not including the Batman 66 animated, the animated Batman 66 stuff, or some of the other animated films. No, we're talking original stories. We're talking the original. We're basically talking the PG-13 stuff, guys. Yeah, most the PG-13 and somewhat some of the R-rated stuff. So yeah, that's kind of what we're talking about here. It's all 30 films in one set. You get basically the movies, you get a collectible book, I guess a coloring book or sketchbook or whatever. You get 3 coins which have Superman, Wonder Woman, and Batman on them. And you get a bonus disc that has a lot of material on it as well, which is like it's got a documentary on the DC heroes and real life heroes. It's got a documentary with Mark Hamill, I think, on the Joker, Finding the Laugh. So it's got a lot of stuff there, guys. It's got a lot of stuff. And yeah, basically the movie, but yeah, basically you get that along with some other bonus features and collectible exclusive items to the set. But the reason I'm doing this is because recently one of the videos that Huey Toonmore had done, surprisingly recently, and let me just fix something there. Here we go. Just trying to adjust something, but anyway, one of the videos that Huey Toonmore had done there we go. But one of the videos that Huey Toonmore had done recently and I saw this on his VidMe channel, seeing as though VidMe right now is the only place where you can actually watch some videos that you can't watch anywhere else. One of his episodes that he did was on Superman Doomsday. Now, my recollection, of course, since I grew up in the 80s and in a majority, basically since I grew up throughout the 80s, and I'm talking, and you know, despite my personal problems and all that at birth, you know, as a child, and all that, I grew up I grew up throughout the entire 80s. I mean, I'm talking from 79 to 80 to the beginning of 90, and of course through the 90s. So I grew up on, you know, a lot of stuff. You know, I grew up on a lot of the 80s cartoons. I grew up on a lot of the comics that were big hits in the 80s. And one of the things I grew up on the most at times was Superman. And this was thanks to my late grandfather. My late grandfather loved Superman, so through him, me and a majority of my cousins ended up liking Superman as well. And so did my mom. And what really got me introduced to Superman, believe it or not, was the Hanna-Barbera cartoons. Yes, this is the truth. I remember watching Super Friends when they would be replayed on TBS. I remember they would be replayed on TNT. I remember watching the Challenge of the Super Friends. So I think one of the last ones they did in 85, I remember that one. So yeah, I grew up on Superman. You know, I even watched the live action films. I have, I think, I have the set of Superman. Well, not the complete set, but it's like Man of Steel. It's like Superman. It's not what it is. It's Superman Returns 1, Superman 1, and Superman 2. Yeah, you kind of see that they did not include Superman 3 or 4, but those are on Blu-ray, believe it or not. Those are on Blu-ray. Uh, anyway, I remember growing up on those. So I grew up on Superman a lot. I grew up on reading the comics, even though I didn't have a majority of them. And of course, anytime an animated adaptation came out, I would watch it. Or at least try to watch it. Of course, the primary animated version of Superman that I saw was done by Warner Brothers, which ironically I do have the complete set of officially, yes, the official complete set of Superman the Animated Series from the 1990s I do have. But yeah, you know, I do have those, you know, I do have that set on DVD. So, imagine my surprise one day. I was still living in Kansas at this time. I think it was about a few months before I moved back here. Imagine my surprise when I saw the trailer for Superman Doomsday, or when I heard they were doing it. Now, of course, in the 90s, I grew up on Superman. And of course, in the 90s, like anybody, I heard about what was happening with Superman. I heard about DC killing him off. You know, I saw the news articles. I saw what Entertainment Tonight had to say. I saw a lot of that. And so it was a major, major deal. And just trying to get an issue at that time was hard to do. Because here's the thing, the event was happening between me moving from the West Coast to the Midwest. So imagine how hard it would be for me to try to get a regular issue, if not a commemorative issue. Fortunately, now I have both. Yeah, I have both. I can't dig them out right now, but I have both commemorative issues. I have the bag. I have the one with the bag, minus the button. But I do have the armband and the article in it. And I do have the regular one. Now you're probably wondering, where did I get these? Well, surprisingly, it wasn't online. No. I lived in Lawrence, Kansas when I got these. And when I got them there, I got them at a place called Half Price Bookstore. Yeah. I don't know, it's just that one day I went in there and Half Price Bookstore is a good place to go. There's no doubt about it, because they have a lot of books that are half off, even new ones that are half off the cover, half off the original ones. But they also have comics and stuff that you can also get half off. A lot less than you would pay, especially used ones as well. So I remember going to the comic shop, going there, and seeing that they had Superman issue 75, and seeing that they had Superman issue 75 in both ways. So I took advantage of that. I bought them and decided, you know what, I got the money, it's the only opportunity I have, I'm going to buy them, and I did. I did buy them. So for me, I was finally able, even though it took like 13, or what was it, about 12 years later or so, I was finally about 12, what was it, was it 90, 93, 94 it happened. I can't remember. But basically, about 11 to 12 years later, I was able to get my hands on them. And all because of the fact that I was also in anticipation of this. Superman Doomsday. I was in anticipation of it. And I remember when it came out, I used to work at Walmart. I used to work at Walmart when the first one came out in Lawrence, Kansas. And what happened is the Walmart I used to work at in Lawrence, Kansas was a 24-hour deal. So basically, when a game or a movie would be released, you could actually go there for the first several minutes, or first 10 to 15, I'd say probably the latest 30 minutes, and get the releases as soon as they came out. It's like at times it was always like, if it was a big time deal for something coming out, people would be not out straight outside the door, but there would be crowds at time of people. They'd be like, as soon as midnight hit, they'd be waiting. The anticipation would build to an intensity, and then a minute or so afterwards, that's when they would start wheeling out the L carts with the new releases, and people would just be getting to them as soon as they could. I think that was similar with this, but not as much. But I remember getting it with the lithograph, with the litho slipcover when it came out. So I was happy to get it like that. And I ended up getting, of course, the 2-disc set, because at the time I didn't have the money for a Blu-ray, and Blu-rays were kind of fairly new, or just barely or fairly new at the time. So I couldn't get the Blu-ray because, one, I don't think it was on Blu-ray just yet. I think that took maybe about a year or two later, a couple years later. But I remember buying the DVD, going home and watching it that night. And I think it's because I did work that day. My schedule was kind of wonky at times until I got it settled. So I remember, I think I may have worked that day, or I may have been off. I can't really remember. It might have been when I worked. Because sometimes if I worked at night, like from 2 to 8 or 2 to 10 or something like that, I would usually spend an hour or so going over to the McDonald's across the street, which ironically we have a McDonald's across the street from where I am now, or from where I work now, and I'd grab something to eat before going to the midnight release. So anyway, I remember getting this the night it came out, the moment they brought it out to be distributed, to be shelved and all that. I remember buying it and then going home along with a few other items and watching the movie. As soon as I got home, I got settled in, I watched the movie, I enjoyed it. There's nothing more that I can say about that I thoroughly can't say, thoroughly that no one else has probably said. I enjoyed the film. I did enjoy the film. I liked it. Now, of course, like anybody, I will admit I did see some numerous differences. And the numerous differences was, of course, like Huey said, there was no omission. There was no, well, not omission, but there was no appearance by the Justice League. There was no appearance by the Justice League or anything like that. Superman wasn't beat to hell like he was in the comics. So, some of the differences and maybe nitpicks that Huey pointed out to are indeed true. I mean, here's something that you would think should have gotten the same treatment that The Dark Knight Returns got when it was adapted several years later. Yeah, The Dark Knight Returns, which is based on the Frank Miller story, ended up getting not one but two DVDs. Not one but two disc, if you will. Basically compiled, basically separated throughout release. So it got a part 1, Dark Knight Returns got a part 1 in, I think around the fall the late summer, early fall of the of 1 year, and then in January, February, he got the second part. Then Warner Brothers decided the best decision to do. Warner Brothers decided that the best decision to do was to release it as a deluxe set. And combined together, it is 148 minutes. Combined together, you got a 2-hour, 28-minute story. And, you know, when someone like Huey comes out and says that they should have spread this out across several discs, I do understand. Because there's so much there's so much that is left out. Certain moments, iconic moments and all that. That even if you throw in this or that to kind of, you know, fill the time or kind of try to make it a little bit different, whether you throw in this or that, you know, there are still going to be elements that fans are going to say, hardcore, diehard fans will say, hey, why isn't this in the film, or why isn't that in the film? You know, I'm sure Angry Joe, if he's done a review on this, or would do a review, he'd point out those omissions as well. He'd be like, you know, why is this not here? Why is that not here? Heck, Joe even said this in his collab with Doug Walker, Nostalgia Critic, on Batman v Superman last year. He pointed out that because of what they did in that movie, Superman, that there are certain iconic moments he'll never get to see. And Huey brought up a good point there. You loosely adapt one of the most iconic DC stories in history into a movie, and yet you don't have the sense, and to at least probably think maybe we should spread this out across a couple of discs, because there's so much, you know, to dig into. You got to remember, well, here's the thing, and Huey does acknowledge this. They were just starting out. They were just starting out with stuff like this. So, just starting out, of course it's going to take them time to learn from some of the mistakes. That's why when people talk about this, they say it's almost a scene-for-scene adaptation of the entire comic. Nearly a scene-for-scene, page-for-page adaptation. You know, had they decided to bring out Superman Doomsday around the same time they brought this out, or a little afterwards, there's probably no doubt they would have given it the same treatment. They probably would have said, hey, we need to spread this out across 2 or 3 discs. But this is at a time when they were just starting. And the best way they knew how to start was to take one of the more iconic stories, besides The Dark Knight Returns, and adapt it into film. That's what they did. That's what they did. So, you know, again, not a lot of people are going to agree with it. What they do is make up with it with some of the special features, like the Rec Room and Rebirth. Superman Lives is comprehensive documentary about how the DC Comics team decided Superman's fate. So at least you get something like that to fill in the void. Overall, when people look at Superman Doomsday, yeah, it's got some moments in there that are taken from the comic and all that. So there's no doubt about that. You know, the battle may, you know, again, there are, like I said, there are things they take away from the comic. Now, are there things that they add in that kind of differ from the original source material? Absolutely. I mean, Lois Lane kind of, as Huey pointed out, kind of already knowing that Superman and Clark Kent are one and the same, and all she's waiting for him to do is admit it. And it takes him basically coming back from the dead to finally do so. Even though it looked like he was going to do it anyway, beforehand. The fact that you took the fact that you took certain elements of the Reign of the Superman story and crammed them into one character. You took certain elements from different Superman incarnations and crammed them into this clone Superman for this adaptation. You know, maybe a nitpick in the eyes of some, but I don't think it's a bad deal. I mean, yes, if you spread the movie across 2 or 3 discs, you could have compensated for that. But when you look at the clone Superman in this adaptation, you see that it does have elements from certain aspects of the other Superman from Reign of the Superman. Now, again, like I said, there are elements they do lift from the comic. You know, the black suit. They lifted that, but they did alter it so it increases his strength when he gets near the sun. You know, like I said, the tattered cape flying in the wind or blowing in the wind. They took that moment from the comic. So there are certain things that they lifted from the comic, kind of molded and made into its own thing, but you could tell were taken directly from the comic. Like Superman's funeral, yeah, didn't have the Justice League. Could have been better if it did have the Justice League, but unfortunately we didn't get the Justice League. So, you know, there was not much you could really do there, but at least it was kind of on that iconic same level of feel that you got with the original comic version. Overall, when I look back at Superman Doomsday, you know, I still watch it whenever I can. And I have to say that it is indeed worthy of being probably so far still the best-selling DVD home video release they've had. I mean, people still go out and buy this. When I saw that Zara Nizarak, I think it was Zara Nizarak, had purchased this on Blu-ray, I was thinking, I got to get the Blu-ray myself. And that's what I did. I ended up getting the Blu-ray. And from then on in, I've been trying to get Blu-ray adaptation or Blu-ray versions of all the DC animated universes. I have basically, if you count both films here as separate entities, I have 20 of the 30 films already. Now, if you want to count these as one whole film, it's 19 out of the 30 films. So, I got a majority of them, just about. I still got to get Batman and Harley Quinn. There are a few omissions in my collection I still have to get. And in the long run, that's going to be a lot cheaper than getting nearly a $212 set. Oh, actually, wait a minute. I have, now I think about it, let's see. I'm looking at my collection right now. I forgot to notice that I also have this. I also have this as well. This is the Crisis on Infinite Earth graphic novel, Blu-ray, and all that. And it got chewed up a little bit by my cat. Oh, by my mom's cat. Got chewed up a little bit. Well, at least this part anyway, not the book. But anyway, yeah, this is Crisis on Infinite Earth. So I have both this. So basically, I have 20 out of 30, if not 20. I have 21 out of 30, which means I just need to get 9 more. Or I have 20 out of 30 if you, like I say, you want to combine this as one. So overall, I have a majority of them, and getting the 9 or 10 more out there is a lot cheaper than going out and buying, the, like I said, a $212 set. Overall though, getting back on track here, to me, this definitely set the bar. I mean, it set the bar in many aspects. It set the bar that you're going to get, that these movies are going to be not for everybody. That these are going to have that PG-13, R-rated stamp associated with them at times, depending on the atmosphere. I think they may have had maybe one or two PG ones, and that's about it. The majority have been PG-13 and R. So it's going to be, so basically you're going to end up getting a lot different feel, a lot different kind of emotion when it comes to these. These are basically, yeah, you could probably watch them with the family, but there's going to be certain ones that come out that people are going to recommend you don't. Overall, though, when I look at Superman Doomsday, like I said, it may not be the best adaptation of a best-selling comic book story. I mean, like I said, there's a lot of omissions that some people will point out, like no Justice League at the funeral, no Reign of the Superman plot element or anything like that. Some people may say that those omissions hurt the story, and some people like Huey, will have a valid point that this is the kind of story that you could have given the same treatment that you did to this. You could have gave it to this, and that's probably true. That's probably true. Overall, though, when I look at Superman Doomsday, for the first attempt at adapting a story, I think they did the best they could. I mean, the animation is very good, and the reason I think it was done the way it was is to kind of give you a hybrid of, okay, those that are familiar with the Batman series and the Superman series will give them that familiar feel with the animation, but adding in certain elements like Lois's hairstyle changing, the lines in Superman, that's kind of more tattered to the hardcore fans to kind of give them more of a comic book-like feel, in my opinion. So you kind of get a hybrid of both of the animation. As far as the storytelling goes, in my opinion, storytelling is definitely top-notch. I mean, for what they were able to do with what they were given, and even with the original additions and with their own original additions to it to kind of help fill it out and expand it. As far as I'm concerned, the story is probably one of the best they've done in a while. I mean, yeah, like I said, there's going to be some hiccups here and there. Some people will point out certain nitpicks, but in the end, I think Superman Doomsday is probably one of the best animated adaptations of any of DC's iconic event comics that you can think of. I mean, would have been great if they had been able to include certain other moments to make it feel more natural and more like a true adaptation. Absolutely. But in my opinion, I think they did what they could. And for a first-time effort, I think they did probably the best job anybody could hope for. So, overall, looking back at it 10 years later, I have to say Superman Doomsday still holds up. It may not be a true scene-for-scene, by-page adaptation, but I think for what they were able to pull off in the first attempt, I think they did a great job. I think they really did. And you know what, if they decide to go and revisit Death of Superman, Doomsday, and try to do like a remake, an animated remake of it, perhaps that time around they'll give it the Dark Knight Returns treatment. We'll have to see. So, let me know what you guys think, though, down below. I'd like to hear what you have to say, but again, looking back at Superman 10 years later, I have to say that they did a tremendous job, in my opinion, and I can't really say any more than that. They did what they could with what they had for a first-time try. They gave us iconic moments that we know from the comic in their own way, in the best way they could. So, kudos to them. I give them a lot of props on that. So, it's a good story too overall if you just oversee some of the omissions and nitpicks. So, overall though, I have to say I highly recommend you watch it if you haven't. And if you are planning to get the DC 10th anniversary collection, yeah, you definitely have to start off with this and to just go through the collection like that. And if you're one of those people that like to compare, I would recommend trying to track down the graphic novel of the death of Superman, if not the individual comics like I did, and read through them and then watch this to try to see what differences and similarities, if not changes, they were able to pull off. So let me know what you guys think down below. Comment if you like. I'd like to hear from you. But that's all I'm going to say on looking back 10 years later on Superman Doomsday. Peace out.